You touched upon language also in between. Let's talk about how language can, especially how people leaders can use language in the workplaces to make it a lot more psychologically safe.
Yeah, there are two levels to this question. One is stuff like don't use stigmatizing language, right? So we tend to use words like depressed, manic. We use OCD, for instance, very, very loosely and very, very casually, very frivolously. So don't use these words as if they don't mean anything. Don't trivialize these conditions. This is true for everybody, but particularly for leaders who are in a position to influence a lot of people. So that's the first thing. The second level to that question is the language of business. Inherent in the language of business is a lot of violence and a lot of aggression, right? And I'll just give you a couple of examples that are self-explanatory. Probably the most worshipped idea or phrase in the HR world is the war for talent. And I had done a little analysis of how employee happiness programs, employee engagement programs, how they derive from this idea of the war for talent. Sometime in the 90s, McKinsey coined this idea. And the ethos, the meaning of this concept is valid. There is a fierce competition. But you see, fierce competition for talent does not sound as glamorous or as catchy as the war for talent. So somebody decided to call it that to be able to give their report a catchy title, and it became a rage. And you can see now how powerful that idea has been in informing so many workplace policies. We talk very casually about killing the competition, especially in cutthroat sort of startup language. We are always talking about killing the competition. We talk about moving fast and breaking things. These are all unnecessarily violent uses of language. And what that does essentially, this is not something that has an immediate effect on your culture. This is something that rots your culture from within little by little by little. It's like rust.
I do want to stress on this moving fast, break things is built for, and this analogy of break is also accept a little bit of failure. But a lot of times in startups startups are not just having a competition with each other. Startups are having competitions with incumbents which have been there for hundreds of years.
True.
And that's why your banking never moved for last 100 years because your banking today just looks like a statement.
A dinosaur.
No, it's such a badly represented representation of your usage of your bank account is these obscure MICR numbers against some transaction, 23 rupees 75 paisa. This has been your credit and debit balance statement forever.
True.
Until a startup comes up and reimagine your banking statements and now starts telling you that, Tanmay, your eating spends are 23% as compared to your traveling spends, which is 17%. By the way, you want to save some money to get a new house? This is what you should be saving every month to get a new house in the next 3 years. So the startups have an important role in economy, and they are challenging the status quo. They are challenging incumbents. So the break fast, move fast and break thing is an iterative way to do it.
Sure.
It was brought in by Facebook.
Yes.
And by the way, they changed this culture code. Why? Because at some point, this organization had to take a lot more responsibility for billions of users, and the break things, this breaking culture was not a very responsible thing to do for them.
Exactly. Now, I'm very glad that you brought that up. Just like I said, for the war for talent, the idea behind it is absolutely valid. It's the way you articulate it, right? Now, Facebook might or might not have changed their culture code or their value or whatever it is, But it is undeniable that the ethos of moving fast and breaking things continues to exist in millions and millions of employees and employers around the world. The idea has not died yet. And disruption is great. Disruption is inevitable, which is what you just described. But when you talk about moving fast and breaking things, very often you are not taking stock of what you are breaking. The gig economy is one of the most neglected stories when it comes to mental health and well-being, etc. A combination of poor wages, a combination of punishing working hours, terrible communication with their employers who are not their employers, technically speaking. This is when the casualty, of sort of move fast, break things culture is real people, and you don't pause to understand that. There is a fundamental disconnect between this utopian, idealistic sort of tech bro culture of moving fast and breaking things, and who is paying the costs for it, right? It is the investors often, but also your employees, also the whole ecosystem.
Battle zones or compassionate workplaces?
Battle zones or compassionate workplaces, yes, yeah.